If I were young again, I'd pay attention to that little known dimension, the taste of endless time. It's just like water, it runs right through our fingers, but the flavor of it lingers like a rich red wine. In those days we were single, and we lived them one by one. Now we hardly see them, they don't walk, they run. But I got plenty left, I've set my sight on. Don't wait up, leave the light on, I'll be home soon.
Hello there, it's Chuck from Above the Basement Boston Music and Conversation. With a background in radio, Jim Olsen co-founded Signature Sounds with Mark Thayer in Northampton, Massachusetts in 1995 and works with some of the finest singer-songwriter, Americana, modern folk, and rock musicians around, including Kris Delmhorst, Lake Street Dive, Twisted Pine, Chris Smither, Peter Mulvey, Erin McKeown, Josh Ritter, and Lori McKenna, to name just a few. He helped guide Signature Sounds through the internet era while fostering a community of musicians who not only have their own projects, but have collaborated with other signature artists to create supergroups like Redbird, Barnstar, and the Pine Hill Project. They started the Green River Music Festival, which was named one of the 50 Essential Summer Music Festivals by the New York Times and is celebrating its 32nd year. So here is our conversation with Jim Olsen, recorded at the Parlor Room in Northampton, Massachusetts. Jim, thank you very much for meeting with us.
You bet.
I know you're a busy guy.
I'm loving your Celtics hat there.
Oh, yeah, you know.
Timely.
Gotta wear the Celtics pride.
I usually don't wear the Celtics hat because it's actually...
I've never seen it.
Well, it's a fitted hat, but it's a little tight. So I've had to stretch it out, and it's really kind of squeezing my brain a little bit too hard. But
is that what happened this morning, or was it the lack of coffee? Because he couldn't start up this morning.
Oh, geez.
It might have been the hat.
That's funny. But anyway, so
it's
actually now it's working now.
Okay, yeah, good.
Excellent.
Did you see the game yesterday?
Yes, parts of it, not the whole thing.
It was a great game.
Didn't need to watch the whole thing. They're killing them.
I know. I recorded it, so I was able to kind of fast forward through the commercials and stuff. And,
nice.
One of the, I don't know if this is a known, speaking of Celtics, if this is a known fact, but the owner, Wick Grousbeck, is a drummer.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I played with him.
At a gig.
He's in a band called French Lick.
French Lick?
Seriously? I love that.
Yeah, he's the drummer for them. And
as in like a guitar lick.
French Lick, Indiana.
Larry Bird's
from
French Lick. French Lick, Indiana.
Yeah, see?
There you go.
It all comes together.
Yeah.
But we've also connected with several of your musicians here. We've talked to Kris Delmhorst.
And it's great to see him right on the wall.
Well, it's good. It makes me easy to remember everybody we've talked to. Kris Delmhorst, Mark Arelli, Mary Gaucher. We're going to talk to Twisted Pine pretty soon. And I want to get Lori McKenna on.
It's part of your lineup, yeah.
And Jeffrey Foucault, too.
Yeah.
And Old Crow Medicine show's coming up. We noticed they're playing the Green River.
Oh, great.
So we're going to talk with them.
You got them coming up, too? That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's really special for us to sit with you, to have, we've heard so much about Signature from the artist's perspective.
Right.
All good things, of course.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. And I love all the artists that we've talked to. Kris Delmhorst is awesome.
She is, indeed.
Yeah.
She and Jeffrey Foucault are just like they're.
Well, then the other one they're
movie stars without a movie is what
Redbird is like they're in together, right? They do
yes,
that
with
together?
Peter Mulvey. Yeah, that's been dormant for a while. That as a thing.
Yeah, she just came out with her latest album recently. Too.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. We actually even had a co-host, Rose Polenzani. Do you know Rose?
I know Rose.
Yeah, she was my co-host because he was out doing his other job.
Excellent.
So she was my co-host. But you started in radio.
I started in radio, college radio in the 70s, the late 70s. And then I moved around New England a bit in the early 80s and landed here in 1984 and worked at a station called WRSI. It's now known as The River. At the time, it was in Greenfield, a little bit north of here.
That's 92.5?
It's a different river.
Not the river.
The Western Mass, the Northampton River. Yeah, but WRSI, its precursor, was Progressive FM commercial station based in Greenfield, and I was the program director there from 84 to 96-ish. that sort of was the beginning of getting involved in the music scene here. How the label started is in the early 90s, we had some fans of the station, one of which was Calvin Klein, the clothing chain. Okay. At the time, they had retail stores. Someone called me up.
It's not just a coincidence, Chuck.
Okay. Someone called me up and said, we would love you to program our above head music in Calvin Klein stores.
Oh, okay.
Boom.
I said, fine, we'll do this. This, of course, is all pre-internet, so we had to duplicate cassettes for each store. Apparently someone's job was to turn over the cassette every 45 minutes or whatever. I programmed the music, but I needed someone to duplicate the cassettes. Looked in the phone book. There was a Signature Sound studio, and that was one of the services they provided. Called him up, met my future partner, Mark Thayer, that way.
Okay.
And
through the Yellow Pages.
To duplicate cassettes. A year or two later, one of my coworkers who hosted a local music program called Homegrown hit upon the idea of making some compilation CDs to benefit the Western Mass Food Bank. We got Mark involved to record some of it in his studio, and in the process of doing that, we hit on the idea of starting a label, and in 1994, that's what we did. The label was based in the basement of my house in Whately, a little north of here.
94 was right a little bit post-grunge. Nirvana was out of the gates in like 92, and there's a lot of, in this side of the country, Dave Matthews buzz, and a lot of sort of people coming from the grassroots hippie genre. What was happening in 94 around that time?
It was also, in New England, a really great time for acoustic music. The singer-songwriter thing was very strong at that point, which is the direction we decided to go in, as opposed to the jam band direction. But it was an interesting time to start a label because it was pre-internet, basically. I mean, you had dial-up email or AOL, whatever, but there was no music on the internet at that point. There was no music marketing on the internet. We had to make pre-recorded cassettes for our early releases, like people still were purchasing music on cassette, and we sort of watched that whole boom happen and have adjusted with it. So it was an interesting time to start a label. It was sort of right before the big bang of the internet.
But was it based also on, like you said, the singer-songwriter core?
It was based on the local music scene.
Which happened to be that.
Yeah, which happened to be very heavy on that. That was our focus at first. There was no grand ambition for the label at first. I still had my full-time job in radio. This was just going to be a little side gig, that little side project that we were sort of experimenting with. And for the first 5 or so years, that's pretty much what it was. It really wasn't until about the year 2000 that we started taking it a little more seriously.
How did you choose the initial acts that you signed?
Basically, through making those compilation CDs, there were certain acts that stood out that were touring and needed the support of a label, and basically they asked us if, once they heard that we were starting this label, would we get involved? People like Brooks Williams, a band called Salamander Crossing, which later became Ronnie Arbo and Daisy Mayhem. They were one of our early artists. Brooks Williams, guy who's been touring for years and years. So we just sort of kind of fell into it, frankly. Neither Mark or I had any experience on the label side at all. It was really a trial and error. We were not well financed. We did not have a lot of money to play with. So it was really kind of bumping along, figuring it out.
We didn't plan this to happen. It kind of happened organically.
It really happened organically.
I mean, I think it's really interesting because you just kind of made a decision. It's like, well, okay, let's do it. We don't know how, but we'll figure it out. And I mean, that's
exactly what we're doing, Chuck. You could see that, how you take chances, you do things, but at the same time, you have to have some plan in general. It's sort of like an organic plan almost.
Right. And you have your little successes that lead to slightly bigger successes. And there was growth there, as small as it was in the first few years. And we just felt like if we stuck with it, we kept attracting interesting artists that were, interested in being part of it. Around the year 2000, we signed a couple of bigger fish, a guy named Richard Schindel, who, was part of Cry, 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 which was, with Dar Williams and Lucy Kablansky. They kind of had a big thing going around that time. And, Richard was our first album that we really sold. I think we sold 25,000 copies or something, but it was really like, oh, okay. And immediately that started the wheels of other people finding us. And from there, we had signed another artist, Erin McKeown, who ended up having a really fantastic career. And the Josh Ritters and Lori McKennas and Mary Gauchers weren't far behind. That all kind of happened.
That was
that
period. The next tier.
Yep. And they were all young, developing artists.
It's late enough for your kids should be home. The policeman says as he takes your beer for his own. thought about his occupation. He knows that you were just chasing a dream to the down line and then backing over again. So he winks at your girls and he tells you all to see you later. From a boy, now I'm begging affection from a man in my house dress. Don't you know who I am? Don't you know who I am? Standing in your kitchen.
How does that example play out? I'm really curious. I need to be a little more educated in not only what you do, but it's evolved with the internet.
Well, everything moves faster now.
Yeah.
Everything was much slower back then. The development of artists was much slower back then. Now everything, can happen quickly if things break right. Not that you sell anything anymore, but like their stature as a touring artist and stuff can grow much more quickly than it used to be.
I mean, I guess the trick is you obviously want to grow, but growing too fast is a death knell. If you're like signing way too many artists, or you're not able to put as much focus on each of the artists. So.
Well, especially back then, because you have to remember you were living in a physical product world, which meant you had to ship out a bunch of product to a bunch of stores. You had to pay for shelf space. You want your albums in Barnes & Noble, you paid for that.
Right.
That didn't happen by accident. And they would keep them for a month, 6 weeks, and if they didn't sell, they'd send them right back, and they get full credit, and they still get that advertising money. So back then, particularly as someone fairly inexperienced, there was some scary times where, we gambled on a few things that didn't happen the way they seemed like they would, and you pay for it. And so you learn by that. These days, there isn't that upfront investment. It's much easier these days. You can sign a dozen artists and put a dozen things out there because the amount of physical product you're making is really very little in comparison. Back then, you were making 10,000 albums to hope to sell 3,000 or 4,000. And those other 6, maybe eventually they'll sell, but maybe not.
The artists that we talk to, their bread and butter is playing live and selling merch.
Yes.
So they have to have the physical object with them now too. But
right. It's amazing to me that people are still buying CDs at shows and just buying CDs, period. Now that new cars don't have CD players in them, computers don't have CD players on, in them anymore. I wonder how much these CDs are actually getting played, at all. Because people probably just play it off their Spotify or off their Apple Music or whatever. That's fine. It's just, but I feel like we're selling these obsolete souvenirs. It's just a strange time.
You know what you could do, actually, is just sell the CD jackets. And then they hang them on the wall.
Right. Have them signed, have them autographed, and that's pretty much it.
Like a band like Wilco, you buy the LP, the album.
Yep.
And it comes with the CD and the download card in it.
Right.
So you get everything. I mean, you're paying a premium price for it.
Yeah.
But you're helping out the artist. I'll always buy the most expensive thing that the artist is selling, whether it be a CD and I may not play the CD and I'll download it, but I'll buy the CD.
God bless you.
I bought some socks at a
People
concert.
really should.
I bought some socks at a Ripe You ever heard of Ripe?
I have not, but
great socks. And I love the fact, and they're really colorful. Pink,
So you should really start
colors.
looking into socks, not CDs.
But
as
my
a record
point is-
label, this does not help us that much.
No, but my point is that they're just selling stuff because they got to make money. Every time I talk about those socks, I get 4 cents, which is nice from Ripe.
Very good.
4 cents? That's pretty much
a good
better
deal.
than
How do I get in on that?
Right, I know.
But do you get people that literally come off the street or want to meet with you all the time that are interested?
I get a lot of that, a lot of unsolicited demos. It actually doesn't happen in person as much as it does people sending you their SoundCloud or their Bandcamp or their downloads of this and that, and you got to hear this and that. And
is that a part of some of these discoveries, or is most of what you do proactive from your side?
Very rarely. There's just too much out there.
Yeah, I mean, how can you listen to it?
I don't have the time to do that. And honestly, we're working with a group of artists, and we can afford to add maybe 1 or 2 artists a year. We're just not looking that hard for new stuff.
But how does it happen if you do get a new person on your lap? Is it a colleague that will recommend something?
It's often the network. It's the network of people we know. And this room is a wonderful incubator for that. We have probably 10 shows a month or so, and they're mostly developing touring artists with some bigger names occasionally. But it's a great way to sort of be introduced to someone and see what they do and see how the audience reacts to it. And
it's sort of like an audition sometimes for these bands.
It's an introduction. Honestly, I can't say I see every show here. I just
you can only see so many.
But what a great way to talk about organic. You're seeing and hearing live music.
Yeah,
and that's where it all comes from. I mean,
that's the best way to know, because you can't tell from a recording and like what they've ever done in the studio. It's really the live organic stuff that really affects me. When I fall in love with a band, it's usually not over the radio. It's always live.
And I think it's not just the live sound and how they perform. One can see the way that they hold themselves too.
Yeah.
I would imagine if you've been doing this business for a while, you're looking for the person, the package, the longevity, who they are. Yes. Not just the actual song and what they sound like.
Yeah, you're looking for that. You're looking for something that has some level of uniqueness to it, so it doesn't sound like 100 other things. At least that's what attracts me. There's a lot of factors, but it all starts with a great song and a good live performance for sure.
Record companies get a bad rap, right? It's always like, oh, these guys are out to screw us, all that kind of stuff.
I think those perceptions are slowly changing.
I think so. I think they are too. That was my point.
That's the lore.
Oh, and believe me, it was true. There's no question it was true.
Yeah. I mean, they've made whole documentaries about it. That Wilco documentary, I'm Trying to Break Your Heart. But there's obviously plenty of awesome people who love music and who want to do right by the musician. So that's
anyone who's left in the label business is doing it out of love, and there's too much transparency for one thing in the business today. Anybody can look up their statistics of sales and downloads.
Yeah.
You can't hide it the way you used to be able to. They used to be able to send those artists out on tour, and those artists didn't even know what the heck was going on, much less how much of anything sold.
Artists are much more in tune to what's happening around them.
Sure.
And more protective too of themselves, and
that's right.
They're not just out to get that.
You can follow the money now, and you didn't used to be able to do that.
Interesting.
Nowadays, on that note, if we look around the room here, and I see some festivals on my left, maybe, and individual artists on my right. If you take a cross section of those, do you sense that there's a theme that people are looking for in signature sounds? Let me ask the question a different way: is this what you guys want to offer? Is there something that most people are looking for, or is it individually tailored to that artist?
I think there is a thread of quality, good songwriting, like I say, somewhat unique music, compelling voices. We absolutely look, when we sign someone, we ask ourselves, well, will fans of the majority of our artists be drawn to this music? And you pretty much have to do that, and almost every label does. It's really hard to be super eclectic as a label and do free jazz over here and indie rock over here and folk music over here. You need to develop a label sound and a label image, and for better or for worse, we have.
So someone comes on board, and there's a part of them that realizes that they're part of a new family. That the other fans that are the viral network or whoever listens to them is going to want the new kid.
Exactly.
I see.
Oftentimes what has happened is we find the artists we're working with are often our best talent scouts. It's new artists they find. It's people they're friends with.
It's very incestuous.
And it really does create a family vibe. I mean, you talk to a bunch of our artists, they're all friends with each other.
Yeah.
That's why it's different than some of those classic labels of growing up what we think about. Where Capitol is going to, or whatever, is going to sign these three different people. They're going to be totally different from each other, but they're signed for different reasons.
I think if there's one label that I can't say we use them as a model because it's a whole different scale, but just artistically, which was really appealing to me, it was the Warner Brothers of the early 1970s, where they had Bonnie Raitt and Randy Newman and Ry Cooder and Tom Waits, and these artists that, now they're household names, but back then it took them 5-6 albums to break them. But there was a sort of a very unique quality through all those records.
Right,
and
they've
all stood up. You can listen to any record by any of those artists, and they all stand up beautifully. But there's a certain thread that runs through it of, again, quality, great songwriting, great performances.
Would you today start a record label if you were just going to start off?
No.
Was it more of a naivete back then, or was it just different because
it's just the scene's changed? What is a record label now is so different from what it was back then.
You're kind of redefining it, aren't you?
Really, a good manager can be a record label, and probably should be for a lot of artists. So many artists now do it well in-house, frankly, and there's no reason for them to need a record label. I'm not saying we have no place in the world. I'm just saying if I were to start again today, it just doesn't fill the same niche. I can't believe people are still starting record labels, honestly, and trying to get it off the ground, because it's really a tough game. Our advantage at this point is that we have a catalog of titles, and while they don't all sell well, they all sell a little bit, they stream a little bit, there's a certain level of funding that we get from those sales that we can count on from month to month to keep it going. If you were to start new from ground zero, that's a long way to go.
But you've also created a culture as well, especially with the festivals that you do.
Well, that's the other piece of our business. We recognized, about 10 years ago that getting into live music was a good idea, and that it was another way to work with our artists and another income stream, obviously, and it proved to be kind of one of the wisest things we've done, is to sort of get into the live music scene.
And that was including the Parlor Room here.
Including the Parlor Room. We also produce shows at venues around Western Mass, the Academy of Music across the street, the Big Theater, a smaller theater called the Shea Theater in Turners Falls, Gateway City Arts, and our biggest venture, which is the Green River Festival, which is something I've been working on for 30-something years.
30?
Yeah. We took it over as a company about 5 years ago. And
is it that long, really? That it's been going on for?
It started as something, very small.
So we try to make it. It's July
13th through 15th.
And where is it?
Greenfield, which is a little north of here.
Yeah.
What a great location, too, because I have family up in Vermont, and we go to Greenfield, Mass., go right through that area, go straight up 91. So you're going to get New Hampshire, Vermont,
absolutely.
Mass.
And our site is such a wonderful site. We're on the community college campus there, Greenfield Community College. It's less than a half a mile from the exit off of 91. So you should definitely go.
Oh, I'd love to go.
Come on out.
Is it growing?
It is at a place where we want it to be and where we kind of can be. The college has given us limits as to how many people they want, how many tickets they'll allow us to sell. And I don't want to grow into Bonnaroo. I have no interest in that. I have no interest in getting something that's kind of out of control.
It sounds like a perfect sweet spot, because you have something robust, standing the test of time for 30 years, growing, but yet, you want it intimate enough that it's a family thing.
Right. And it's, it's pretty wonderful in that it gives us, again, another chance to work with artists, even the artists like this year we're having Josh Ritter back. Last year we had Lake Street Dive back. There are artists that have moved on from the label, but we're still friendly. We still generally produce all their concerts when they come around here, and it gives us another way to work with them.
From the perspective of the artist, do you find that less and less artists are trying to get signed?
Not so much.
Yeah. I find that most of them seem to be producing their own stuff. They're going in the studio. They're doing their Kickstarter. They're doing that, and they're just touring the hell out of it.
That is mostly what it is at this point. If a label comes along and wants to help, and it seems like a logical move, they'll do it. It's not the be-all, end-all that it used to be. It used to be, you go to South by Southwest and pray you'd meet that label and get signed, and your career didn't really start until that happened.
It's almost a relief.
Yeah.
It weeds out things that are not quality, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
You can get an incredible act that comes out of nowhere, of course.
You get things that are hiding in plain sight, and that was the case with Lake Street Dive. When I first encountered them, they had played the Lizard Lounge in Boston, and that was pretty much about it. They were incredibly talented musicians. They all had other things going on. They were all in 3 different projects, and they would do this for fun. It was hiding in plain sight. It was like, how could a band like this not be discovered? And that was my first encounter with them. I was like, holy crap, there's so much talent here. These people are unbelievable. And even then, it took them, even though we signed them and stuff, it took them a couple years to get free of all those other distractions and all those other projects and say, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to concentrate on.
So was that one of your personal things you're proud of? Is that you worked with them? Or?
That was sort of my record label lottery ticket moment, was discovering them. You just don't discover bands like that when there's nobody else chasing them around. There's nobody.
Where were you, at the Lizard, when you saw them first?
No, they a friend of mine, Matt Smith from Passim.
Yeah, I know, man.
They had started to make these super homegrown videos, which now you see all the time, but this is talking 2009. It was still fairly not all that common. And they were like shaky, handheld. You can still see them. They're still out there. And Rachel Price, the singer, was clearly like, who is this woman? This woman is really something. The first time I saw them, I had emailed them a couple times, and so they took the initiative of booking a gig in Western Mass at a little bar in Turner's Falls called The Rendezvous. The bass player, Bridget, I had known because she was in our band, the Sweetback Sisters, that we work with. It's a rainy Sunday night. I show up. There were 5 people there. Band plays, absolutely knocks me out. And from that point on, I'm the one following them around and just trying to give them advice. And they had just finished the album that was Lake Street Dive. They didn't know what to do with it, so we offered to put it out. And from there, for the first couple of years, I was kind of their de facto manager because they had nobody, and it was more about navigating, getting them a booking agent, navigating and getting them free from the other projects, and just saying, this is the one you got to focus on. This is the one that could be big for you.
And you're wearing 2 hats in a sense, where you're working with the album side and putting out that new album, and you're also working on the grassroots ground level.
Yeah, I mean, I was basically, they used to call me the band dad because, I was the old guy who was giving them advice basically about how to do things and hooking them up when I could with gigs or, like I said, with a booking agent.
And I can see how tearing them away, I mean, it seems almost like a natural thing for some of these musicians. I mean, again, just looking at these posters, Barnstar, I see Zach, the bass player, he's in that. And I know he's got several other projects. Peter Mulvey, I know, well, he's in Redbird, right? Jeffrey Folkall, everyone's doing something else.
Everybody's doing something else. With them, it was extreme because they were doing other things without each other. 4 individuals in different bands.
So it wasn't breaking up just 2 bands.
Just getting them, just finding dates where they could play shows was hard because they were all in other bands.
I like that they have these like little supergroups. Almost like this person from this band, this person from another band that you like already, and they're all getting together and doing this other project that sounds totally different from what they were doing before. Yeah.
And it allowed them to develop out of the spotlight a little bit. It wasn't like we're putting all our eggs in this basket. We're going to go full on from here. For them, it was really when they did get together and play, I feel like they had a certain energy and a certain swagger about them. They enjoyed it. They weren't necessarily counting on it to be anything.
Yeah. Right. We talked with Mark Orelli, who, is a wonderful guy, wonderful singer-songwriter. He talked about playing lap steel for Josh Ritter. Mm-hmm. You can see it in his eyes that he's not the boss when he's with another artist. He's the side man that is really working on his craft of that live performance mostly, but also bringing the lap steel, bringing a vocal, bringing percussion, whatever someone brings to that other group, I think is got to be a breath of fresh air for them. Yeah, because you're not the boss.
Right.
You're doing what you love.
Mark reinvented himself. We signed him as a UMass grad student, as a singer-songwriter. He's a wonderful singer-songwriter. He was at it for a number of years and not making the kind of progress he had hoped to make, I think, in terms of his career. Such a hard-working musician that he started teaching himself other instruments, started teaching more lead guitar, and just made himself a wonderful sideman. Now he's got 2 careers. 3 careers, 4 careers. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
cool.
Depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah, and that comes down to you have that magic in a bottle where you found Lake Street Dive, but then you also get these other musicians who just hustle. They are constantly trying to do something new and different with other people, trying to learn, trying to grow. It's not just I'm a singer-songwriter. This is what I'm going to do, and this is it. They're expanding their horizons. That's what's make them so interesting.
There's some other types of music where they cross-pollinate. But there's something about this music I think they do even more.
Is there a certain tempering of expectations sometimes when you sign an artist?
We don't try to sell ourselves as some magic pill for your career. Yeah. We had a little of that after Lake Street Dive hit with the phone was ringing a lot with people wanting to sign with the label because we did this thing with Lake Street Dive. And I'm not saying I beat them off, but I realized that was just a certain thing that to a degree we got lucky with right place, right time sort of thing and just hitched our star to the right musicians. It wasn't necessarily any magic that we did that made that happen.
How do you find the tipping point of how many artists you're representing?
We can only put out 1 album at a time every couple months. So there's maybe 6 albums a year. These days it might even be less than that. And so you're working with these artists. You got to keep them happy. You don't want to keep them waiting for 2 years before putting out their next record. So it's just a matter of how the calendar fills up and keeping a balance on it. There's certain artists that just have priority, frankly. We've been working with Chris Smither for a long time. We've been working with Elin Jewell for a long time. We love them as artists, as people. We have a successful partnership. And when they want to put out a record, I make sure that we are able to put out a record when they want to put out a record.
Twisted Pine, a newer one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we met the singer at Passim.
She was working the door at Passim.
And we heard
Rachel?
about her band
Rachel,
a couple years ago. We were at a Passim show. She said, yeah, check out my band too, Twisted Pine. And they seem to be taking off.
Yeah, that's what
They're super talented kids. They're another example of something needing to marinate and to grow, because when we first met them, we saw the talent, but the lineup was completely different. They've gone through several lineup changes, and they were just kids, and they just needed to work through some things to find their sound. A couple of the people who work here actually manage them as well, and so we've sort of worked with them on a more holistic way than we work with a lot of artists. We help them work through that to finding the lineup that works, to finding the sound that works. And they've grown, because they're so young, they've grown as musicians.
Well, hopefully they'll stay twisted, but the growth of the pine will still be
Exactly.
increased.
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh, wow, look at you. Yeah, we met Rachel. We went to go see Honeysuckle, the band Honeysuckle.
Yep.
And they're fantastic too.
Yep.
And it was funny because we met Rachel at the door, and then I went the week after to
Holly,
see
right? Yeah.
Holly was waitressing that night.
Uh-huh.
They're hustling, these people. They work their asses off.
Welcome to the music biz.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But it's inspiring because they're all very, I'm not close to them by any means at all. They just seem optimistic, not about like becoming famous or anything like that, but they're just...
No, they're in a good place.
Yeah.
They're in a good place. It's a super compelling band. And, the string band thing is so great because you can go out in a minivan.
Right.
You're not...
There's not a lot of gear.
It's a killer these days for rock bands.
No, you know what? Mumford and
You know.
Sons came to the stage, 8 years ago or so, whatever it was. And I remember hearing just a bass drum with those groundbreaking hits.
Yep.
And they could play this place or a living room or an arena.
Yeah.
That's what's so brilliant, I think, about bands like Twisted Pine and Honeysuckle and others, is that you can see them in different places. Yes, the minivan, but I could also see them, opening up for somebody at not just Sinclair, but, Gillette.
Right.
Hopefully we didn't just jinx them. Or maybe they'd never want to play Gillette. Who knows?
Who?
Twisted Pine.
Twisted Pine?
They'd play Gillette. They'll play anywhere.
Let's get them to open up for Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a fan of going all the way out to Gillette.
Well, you don't have to go.
I have to go see Taylor Swift there this year.
I've never been.
This summer. I've never seen a concert there.
And I don't know who would be able to play there that would make me go. I love watching the Patriots on TV. I'm perfectly happy doing that.
Me too. I got my bathroom. I got my fridge. That's all I need.
Yep.
But I'm taking my daughter to
Concerts
Taylor
weren't
Swift.
made for arenas. I'm sorry.
Oh, God.
For football stadiums, it just...
You hear that, guys? Chuck just needs a bathroom and a fridge.
That's all you need.
And what else do you need?
A couch. Big screen TV. Is there something next? Is there something big that you're doing, or is it just kind of keep on keeping on? Is it, what's coming on for you?
We're always looking for interesting new things to do, whether it's the label or the live production side.
Do you try to replace people as other people leave? Do you try to keep an even...
There's an element of that. It's always nice to have new things. I mean, I won't kid you. A lot of the people on the wall have moved on.
Yeah.
Or they've just decided to do it themselves, which makes much more sense in this age.
And I can tell already that the family aspect really holds true. That obviously you're going to have some, like any business, you're going to always have issues and of course some disagreements. But at the end of the day, you can tell that people are signing on to Signature are part of a family.
Yeah.
And that's what families do. Families change.
And best I can tell, there's very little bad blood between us and artists that have left. I can't think of any examples of anyone who's left in a huff or angrily.
That's great.
We're here to serve the artist, and we try to make sure that it's a positive experience for everyone, and it helps with our reputation in signing other artists.
Well, these posters are great. I'm going to steal some of them before I leave.
Yeah, your meeting's at 3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you leave, we can take some.
Yeah, there you go. Ransack the place.
very special thanks to Jim for taking the time to sit with us. You can check out all the artists at Signature Sounds at signaturesounds.com and also get tickets to the Green River Music Festival at greenriverfestival.com. Go to abovethebasement.com where you can join us on Patreon, sign up for our newsletter, listen and subscribe to our podcast, like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, and look at all the nice pictures we post on Instagram. We are everywhere. On behalf of Ronnie and myself, thanks for listening. Tell your friends, and remember, Boston music, like its history, is unique. How would you like to join us in creating great conversations that inspire and connect? Patreon is a membership platform that provides a way for creators like us to build relationships and provide exclusive experiences to subscribers or patrons. We have been self-financed since we got off the ground in June of 2016, but in order to continue to fully invest all we can in each episode, we need your patronage. For more information, please go to patreon.com/abovethebasement.